or lived like they did 50 years ago. It isn't all that. No alcohol, no sugar, no white flour, no rice, and went back to their foods, which birds, kangaroo, a variety of grubs, local insects, turtle, crocodiles, to just give you a feel for the kangaroos, yams, figs, bush honey, lived on that. And they still had old enough people, some around, that were advisors to those groups, and went around and lived. I think it was as short as 3 months, maybe something no longer. And then being a bioanthropologist, a biologist, after 7 weeks, Odea drew blood and she found these striking changes in virtually every measure of their health status. All had lost an average of about 18 pounds. Blood pressure dropped along with the triglycerides in normal range. Proportion of these things that we get because somebody discovered it and it has some importance. So now corporate America or corporate world bombards us with omega-3s, but their proportion of omega-3s in their tissue increased dramatically because wild game is always, and I know some of this because of the work we've done in Alaska with marine mammals, walruses particularly, and fish. They're much, all wild animals are, or grass-fed, are lower in saturated fats and are higher in omega-3s. And, eicosaphenolic acids and a couple of other ones that are in it. So, obviously, just a second, exercise was no stranger to them either, because they had to move around. They could, wipe out their base, especially in a place like Australia. So they moved quite a bit and moved like their ancestors did. And the diabetes rate, that was one of the main things she was looking at. Diabetes rate plummeted. Diabetes 2, which a lot of you know is onset, we used to call it maturity onset when I was in graduate school. It's no longer maturity onset. We have kids in the lab up in Alaska, 6, 8 years old, already showing some of the classic signs. But I don't want to steal too much because you're maybe going to do the picture. Joe.
It's called the Vor Buffalo Jump. The sinkhole, the Vor Buffalo Jump. That's what it's called. Vor, V-O-R-E.
No, I couldn't find it. I got it.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So, I now have Thursday, folks, and then whatever don't get through will be next Tuesday on these discussing. And we now, and does everybody have 2 books? I just wanted to be sure because I think one of the books, I think I'm still due a couple books and I haven't gotten them yet. It's okay. So now we're finally getting to the topic at hand that all of you had a chance to by now read, and hopefully you did, and that we can participate together as folks that are examining these kinds of things, and that is to look at Yersinia pestis. And I will just set the scene a little bit if you don't mind. As you read that, it's the first large pandemic disease that we at least focused in on. But can you imagine living? And that's why those sources at the end are good reading that we'll talk a little bit more about. Nobody's assigned for them, but let's all be sure to read at least some of them at the end because it's in the people that have lived at that time that wrote about them. But can you imagine what that must have been? You had no knowledge of really, some people argued marasmus and bad airs out of swamp water, and of course many people's God's punishment for sin, but just these people just dying like this. I mean, we're talking, and we'll hear from girls, I'm sure, about the number, but it is amazing the world that we live in today and the understanding that we have accumulated to at least partially thwart anything of that sort if we, as public health measures, can jump in on our World Health Organization and that kind of stuff. Because I think it's real hard and difficult for us to figure out how we ourselves get a response. So apparently contagious, and so many dead just around you all the time. And you could be, in some cases, as they point out, alive, and then within a couple of days, so many coffins. People didn't build them anymore. Agreed to make coffins. You know? I don't remember who had the first few pages. I'll just let you start.
The first, I had 11 through 16.
Okay. Well, whatever we have,
only had
it
5.
doesn't matter.
I think you have like 16.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but, you know, some of, I take responsibility because remember that first day we were working about how we're going to do the obligations of the course, and so just let's just take what one of who has it. Who you both did the same thing? Is that what you did?
Oh, I did.
She read the whole thing.
Okay.
She'd start.
Okay. So whoever wants to start, just mention some of the hallmarks.
A hallmark. Okay.
Okay. What you found interesting?
All right. Starting out was with the would have to do with the headstones that I don't know if any of you actually remembered it. They talk about headstones, and I want to say it's called Kyrgyzstan or something like that. It's a weird. Yeah. I actually have what the tombstones actually said. I just need to find them, but it had something to do. It alluded to the plague. It went ahead and actually said that she died of the plague. It was actually a female's tombstone, and that's the first documented thing of the plague. But the one thing that I found just really creepy is that the Mongols actually used it as biological warfare. So.
Oh yeah. It's kind of a first good documentation of terror warfare or chemical or what was it called?
And actually, in both of his books, he actually in this book and in his other books, he says that that's just one of the first documented, that he's come across.
So where was this at?
Where
did this take place geographically?
I want to say it was in Kaffa. It was in the port of Kaffa that all this happened.
And that port is on, incidentally, for just to bring back your memory as you read it. My ancestors came from that general area. It's part of the Black Sea, part of Ukraine now, on the north end of that, right? Part of it's on the Black Sea coast. That's really
It's
where
on the map.
traditional Kaffa. Okay, it was.
It's on page 13.
Yeah.
If you look at the map and you look at the Black Sea,
so
right there, Kaffa on the north part.
So, okay. So, what was the context of this? Why were people there? Or,
It was just a huge port. It was
okay.
It was trading and everything.
Okay.
And see what they thought actually happened was that traders actually brought the plague from somewhere else where they were thinking from.
Think of the stands, Uzbekistan, central steppes, and the high plateaus of Mongolia.
Yeah. So.
Where we have, a lot of us now have heard since the war about Uzbekistan and Turkestan, the stands in that area. And let me just, if that's okay, call me when the presenters are, I'm going to get to that, shut up. That's fine, really, because I don't know how everybody's going. I'm just throwing things out because I read a couple books on Genghis Khan in the last couple of years, and he had set up, of course, that half of everyone in the world probably has some sort of Mongol genes, a prolific reproducer wherever he went and spread the genetic load, But what he had built then was this called the Silk Road for that overland transportation, spices and what else, presenters?
Well, dry goods, because they
dry goods, and for our concern,
Wait, no, she just say it right first.
Pardon?
Furs.
Marmot fur. Big in demand as the exchange product, and this port was a lively place filled with rats and exchange of that Silk Road. So these Genoese or Italians, basically traders, were given permission to go up there by the great Khan's sons. By this time, of course, this is no wonder Genghis Khan the Great. It was his son and nephew, but it doesn't matter. So this was the big exchange trade place, and so that's the context where all this occurred. Huge trading ships in the harbor, just packed. If you think about that, just thinking about that harbor, and filled full rats by now. But so that anyway, you can go on. I got more stuff I want to add, but as we go along. But that's the context under which we have to understand the entry into Europe and North Africa of this particular bacteria, riding the sails and the winds of ships. Anything else you found kind of intriguing out of that as you first repeated?
Out of the how like the geographical or just
No, just
what I read?
anything. I wanted to just set that setting because that's basic to little.
The three forms of how the plague was actually transferred. It was interesting that there's actually three different forms rather than just one. And I honestly thought that it was just the how was it?
Buboes.
Yeah.
From bubonic plague.
I thought that it was, transferred through that way and through, through the air. I had no idea that there was other ways to go ahead and get it. So let me hold on. I'll find it. Go ahead and continue. I gotta find it.
I'll just mention that these buboes, I'll just add a little biology to it. These were nodules that showed up because of infection of the lymph, right? Mm-hmm. All of you know. Where are our lymph glands when you get sick? Okay, where?
Under your arm.
Everywhere.
And the groin. And we're talking big stuff, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Your book doesn't say it, but
golf
ball size to baseball size and more. Okay.
Actually, these are all. This book, I don't know. It has all of the. It's actually a primary source. It has most of our book talks about. I don't know how to say his name, but his last name it looks like Piazza or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Him and Gabriel Debussy. We actually have a few of his excerpts in this book, and it says what happened. And hold on, I'll actually find one.
At the back of this, though, I believe it has him also. The sources at the back of that chapter.
Way.
Yeah. If you'll read, and we can talk a little bit about that because it's important that we, whenever we can, like on those models, that we talk about this. It's very specific. What is the disease? How is it caused? What's the distribution of it? Remember that when we went through some of those models? And then we should talk about what's its effects. How did it or did it not have big effects on society? And what were those effects? So we get some history here. We even get some religious import. So that's, I don't know how far we'll get along those kinds of details today, but that's, it's the first time we're doing this, okay? So I'm just trying to give you a feel for what I think we ought to get out in our friendly discussion of the readings. That's all we're trying to have. And if this works out like I want and expect, and I have no doubt it will, as you get seeing what is transpiring, we don't need exams, in my own opinion. But see, one of the things that right now would have helped both of you, if you'd have had your summary and stuff on one page, so that's what you need to hand into me and have that ready, or detailed outline, so you kind of go through systematically, through at least getting some of those things covered, and then you can bet the rest of us will throw in something else that you didn't have there, that's fine. That was in your opinion and your considered opinion as you read it and then reread your section. So anyway, I'm just pointing out that this would help us. Okay, go ahead, Simone.
Okay. So Piazza, he actually said in his chronicle from 1347 to 1361, it records possibly the first of the plague on European soil in October of 1347 in Messina. What he actually said is that the plague thus infected and penetrated the body so that its victims violently spat out blood, and this coughing up of bloody septum continued incessantly for 3 days until they expired. And that was just mostly, everyone, it almost seemed anyone that came in contact with anybody with the plague almost seemed to pass. It was just, I don't know, it's scary. It just came so close to just taking out, I believe it took out a third of Europe's entire population. I believe it was.
Yeah, I mean the details of that will have like any other, study, a plus and a minus error ratio, because it's pretty, you get different kinds of, and the same thing with the flu, influenza of 1918 next week we'll talk about. Let me just put, because I guess I'm doing it because these are, I feel obligated, and being the leader of the pack, it's in a certain respect, that it came in, she mentioned 3 forms, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason this is important for just a moment is one that we hear a lot of, bubonic plague. The other one is pneumonic that you just described. This is the only one that goes directly from human to human. The other one, probably, think about the time. What did you read about how those housing was cramped up, particularly in cities, but even in rural areas, poor housing, and people stored food inside. And rats.
System.
Yeah.
I heard
So they were probably always in close association. And I know that your book might say, I'm sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to
Yeah.
say that there was an old story saying that since people believed that cats were supposed to be like witches and stuff, they actually executed cats, and they went ahead and exploded the rat population. That was supposed to be one of the leading factors possibly happening.
Thank you. That was a point that has not been raised a lot, and I just only discovered it myself about 5 or 10 years ago. That papal decree out of Rome declared that there was cats were related devilish kinds of creatures and all that stuff. So there was a mass extermination in much of Europe of cats. Oh my God, I read that. I thought, well, what does that open up?
Yeah.
You changed the whole predator-prey relationship.
Yeah.
So while we're at this point, let me just say something about rats. I think it's rats of all in Washington, D.C. and the legislator in the White House. Oh, no. Who's saying?
Naughty, naughty.
Back in your closet. But rats are all over the world. We didn't get plague in this country until the 1890s. San Francisco. Ships come in, rats are running, you can't get rats. They're very ferocious. They breed like rabbits. And they are very ferocious. They'll eat each other if food all runs out. They'll fight to the death if they're cornered. Some of you, I have had my personal experience with rats in the farm and ranch, believe me. And they're omnivorous. They eat meat, seeds and grain they prefer, but no problem. They take pig